Chapter 1. Shadows Among Wolves. They said Omegas were born to serve, but no one said it would hurt this much. The morning frost bit through Arya's bare feet as she scrubbed the courtyard stones, her breath rising in little clouds of pain. Her palms were cracked and bleeding from days without gloves, and her stomach twisted with hunger she'd learned to ignore. Around her, the Frostveil Pack stirred, the clang of armor, the echo of laughter, the scent of power and meat thick in the winter air. No one looked at her. No one ever did. "Move, Omega!" barked Jaren, her master's eldest son. His voice cracked through the cold like a whip. Arya froze, clutching her bucket tighter. He kicked it from her hands, water spilling over the stones and freezing instantly. She whispered, "I'm sorry." Jaren smirked, towering over her. "Sorry doesn't make you less useless." Her pulse thudded in her throat. She bowed her head, because that was what Omegas did. They bowed. They stayed small. They endured. And yet, deep down, something inside her rebelled. A quiet flicker of light that refused to die. Maybe it was foolishness, or maybe it was faith. The moon goddess had to see her. Didn't she? Still, she worked. The stones were slick with ice, her fingers numb. And then the air shifted. Every wolf in the courtyard stilled. A heavy silence fell, so sudden it hurt her ears. Then he stepped into view, Alpha Rylan, tall, unforgiving, beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful, dark, dangerous, alive. His black hair gleamed with melting snow, his eyes sharp and silver like twin blades. His presence rolled through the courtyard, making even the warriors straighten in reverence. He didn't need to speak. The air obeyed him. As he passed, Arya lowered her gaze so quickly her neck ached. But even bowed, she felt him. His power, his scent, his calm fury. Then, by some cruel twist of fate, his boots splashed through her spilled water. The noise made her flinch. For one impossible heartbeat, his gaze flicked toward her. Their eyes met. Silver to brown, Alpha to Omega. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to burn her from the inside out. Rylan said nothing. He turned and walked away, his guards in tow. But Arya's world didn't return to normal. Her hands trembled, her breath shallow. For the first time, someone had looked at her and she wasn't sure she would ever be invisible again. That night, as the moon rose over Frostveil, she knelt beside the hearth and whispered to the shadows, "Moon goddess, if you hear me, tell me this life isn't all I'm meant for." The fire cracked softly, and somewhere beyond the snow, a silver shimmer flared, faint and distant, as if someone had just answered. Chapter 2. Whispers of the Goddess. By the time the next dawn arrived, Arya's hands ached from scrubbing, her back from bending. The world outside her window was blanketed in white, but beauty meant nothing when it bit like this. That evening, her master's wife shoved a basket into her hands. "Take the offerings to the temple. Don't linger. The goddess doesn't need filth like you breathing her air." Arya bowed and said nothing. But as she trudged through the forest path toward the old temple, she felt the sting of those words. Each step sank deep into the snow, each breath puffed into the freezing night. The temple sat on the mountain ridge, a structure carved from black stone, where the candles never went out. The moment she entered, the silence changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was listening. She knelt at the altar and placed the herbs and silver coins in their bowls. Her voice trembled. "I don't ask for much," she whispered. "Just a sign that I'm seen." For a long moment, nothing. Then, the flame nearest her flickered. Silver light bled through orange, painting her face in pale glow. Her breath caught. The air shimmered, and a soft voice seemed to echo, not in her ears but inside her mind. Light cannot remain hidden forever. Her heart pounded. Who said that?" she whispered. But the flame calmed, the light fading to ordinary gold. The voice was gone. Only the echo of those words lingered like a promise. On the way back, She wrapped her thin cloak tighter. The woods whispered with the wind, and somewhere far below she could hear wolves howling. Maybe it was the goddess's way of reminding her she was part of something bigger. But then, laughter. Male. Sharp. Familiar. She froze behind a tree. 3 figures trudged along the path below, their breath misting in the air. Jaren's voice carried clearly. "Rylan thinks the pack still respects him," he sneered, "but half the council already turned." Another wolf chuckled darkly. "Careful, Jaren. If he hears—" "He won't," Jaren interrupted. "After tonight, Alpha Rylan will be nothing but a memory." Arya's heart lurched. She pressed a hand to her mouth, biting back a gasp. Her breath fogged the air. They were serious. They were planning to kill him. Then, without warning, a twig snapped beneath her boot. The laughter stopped. "Did you hear that?" Panic surged. She dropped to her knees behind a fallen log, pressing herself into the snow. Her pulse hammered so hard she thought they could hear it. "Probably a deer," one muttered after a tense moment. Their footsteps crunched away. Arya exhaled shakily. Only then did she notice the small scrap of parchment half buried in the snow where they'd stood. She crawled forward and picked it up. The paper was torn, stained with something dark. Blood, maybe. And on it were only 5 words. "We kill the Alpha tonight." Her fingers went numb. Her breath came shallow. The red moon. The moonlight gathering. It was all happening tonight. She clutched the note to her chest. "Moon goddess," she whispered. "What do I do?" The wind seemed to whisper back, cold and urgent. "Run." Chapter 3. The Errand After Dusk. The sky bled crimson as the moon rose, casting a strange glow over Frostveil. Arya stood at the edge of the servants' quarters, clutching the torn message so tightly it cut into her palm. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, her pulse echoing in her ears. Every instinct screamed to stay silent, to survive. But deep down she knew, if she did nothing, Rylan would die. And if he died, everything would fall apart. Her wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. Fear? Yes. But also something else. Something stronger. Before she could second-guess herself, she moved. She slipped past the sleeping guards across the frozen yard. The cold bit through her rags, but she barely felt it. Snowflakes clung to her lashes as she ran toward the Alpha's domain, the part of Frostveil no Omega was allowed to cross. Her breath rasped out in short gasps. The forest whispered like it knew her name. By the time she reached the iron gate, her lungs were on fire. 2 sentries stood guard, tall as pillars, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Who goes there?" one barked. Arya stumbled forward, shaking. "Please, I need to see Alpha Rylan." The guards exchanged incredulous looks. "An Omega? Here?" one scoffed. "You'll die for this foolishness." "I found something," she blurted. "A message. Someone's going to kill him." They didn't let her finish. One grabbed her arm, twisting it painfully behind her back. She cried out. "Lies," the guard growled. "You think we'll believe the word of a servant?" Tears stung her eyes. "Please, if I'm lying, then kill me after. But if I'm not, enough." The voice cut through the night like thunder. Both guards stiffened immediately and turned. Rylan emerged from the shadows beyond the gate, cloak trailing over the snow. His gaze landed on her like a physical weight. "What's this?" His tone was low, measured, dangerous. Arya fell to her knees, gasping. "Alpha, please. Someone plans to kill you tonight." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the parchment with trembling fingers. He took it slowly, eyes scanning the torn words. His expression didn't change, but the faint tightening of his jaw said enough. "Where did you find this?" he asked quietly. "In the woods," she whispered. "I heard them talking. They said, by dawn, you'd be gone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Snow drifted between them, glowing under the red moon. At last, Rylan spoke. "If you're lying, Omega, the punishment will be death." "I know," she said softly, "but I couldn't stay silent." Something flickered in his eyes, something unreadable. He turned to his guards. "Bring her inside. Double the patrol at the gates. If she speaks truth, this night is far from over." As the guards dragged her to her feet, Arya felt her knees buckle in relief. For a fleeting second, she looked at him. And beneath that cold, stoic mask, she thought she saw surprise, maybe even respect. Still, her heart twisted with fear, because the words from that parchment were etched in her mind, and she could feel fate closing in around them like a storm. She didn't know what scared her more, the thought that she'd saved him, or that she hadn't done it in time. Chapter 4. The Alpha's Judgment. The hall was colder than the storm outside. Dozens of eyes bore into Arya as she knelt on the marble floor, snow still melting in her hair. The weight of the room pressed on her like stone. Warriors lined the walls, their armor gleaming in firelight, and at the far end sat Alpha Rylan on his carved throne of black pine and silver. He looked nothing like the man she had seen in the courtyard that morning. In the flickering torchlight, his power was almost tangible, coiled, patient, lethal. When he spoke, his voice rumbled low, carrying through the hall. "You said someone plans my death. Speak clearly, Omega." Arya forced the words through trembling lips. "I heard them in the woods, your own men, Jaren's voice among them. They said the strike will happen under the red moon. I found a message, written in blood." Murmurs spread like wildfire. The beta stepped forward, stiff and skeptical. "This girl serves the council's house," he said. "Why would they speak of treason within her reach?" Rylan's silver eyes stayed on her. "Good question. Why you?" "I don't know," she whispered. "I was running errands. I wasn't meant to hear. But if I stay silent..." Her voice cracked. "You'll die." The guards shifted uneasily. Rylan rose from his throne. Even that small motion made the air tremble. He descended the dais slowly, stopping before her. His scent, smoke, pine, rain, rolled over her, and her wolf cowered and shivered at once. He studied her face, as if searching for the lie. Then quietly, "Look at me." She lifted her eyes. The world seemed to narrow until only he existed. "Do you understand what it means to accuse a highborn of treachery?" "Yes," she breathed. "Death." "Then why risk it?" Her answer was barely a whisper. "Because no one else would." For a heartbeat, something flickered across his features. Respect, or maybe confusion. Then he turned away. "Lock the gates. Double patrols. Bring Jaren to me." The beta frowned. "My lord, if she lies, then I'll deal with her myself." 2 guards approached. Arya expected chains, maybe worse. Instead, Rylan gestured to the side chamber. "Keep her there until I decide what to do. She stays under my protection until this night is done." Protection. From him. As they led her away, the room erupted in uneasy whispers. Chapter 5. The Prison of Truth. The side chamber was small and windowless, lit only by a single torch. Arya sat on the cold stone floor, hugging her knees. Through the door, she heard distant footsteps and muffled voices. Her heart hadn't slowed since she entered. Every echo sounded like doom. What if he doesn't believe me? She'd seen the way his counsel looked at her, with disgust, with amusement, as if she were a stray dog that had wandered too close to the throne. The door creaked open. A shadow filled the frame. Rylan stepped in. Alone. Arya scrambled to her feet. "Alpha!" He raised a hand. "Be still." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, sharp and fragile. Then he said, "You claim you heard Jaren's voice. You're sure of that?" "Yes." Rylan's gaze hardened. "He's council blood, a general's heir. If you're wrong, your head will decorate my gate." "I'm not wrong." He studied her again, eyes narrowing slightly. You fear death? Of course, she said, voice trembling. But fear doesn't make me blind. Something in her tone made him still. Then he took a step closer. You remind me of someone, he murmured. A wolf who spoke truth when no one wished to hear it. She died for it. Arya's breath caught. Did the goddess save her? No, he said quietly. Not that time. He turned, cloak brushing the floor. If your words prove true, Omega, you'll have done more for this pack than most with titles. Until then, stay here. When he left, the torch sputtered and dimmed, leaving her in half darkness. She sank back to the floor, trembling but oddly calm. Because for the first time, she'd seen something in him beyond rank and power. He'd looked at her, not like an Omega, but like a possibility. And that, somehow, terrified her more than death. Chapter 6. Under the red moon, hours bled away. Outside, the celebration of the moonlight gathering thundered on. Drums, laughter, the clash of tankards. No one knew the knife hanging above them. From her cell, Arya could hear the echo of it all. Then came footsteps, hurried, angry. The door burst open and the beta stormed in, gripping her by the arm. The Alpha summons you. Her pulse spiked. Why? Did he find them? Move. They led her through winding corridors to the grand hall again. The torches burned lower now. Shadows danced over the walls. Ryland stood at the center of the room, his sword drawn, eyes blazing silver. Jaren knelt before him, wrists bound. Blood streaked his cheek where someone had struck him. Ryland's voice was ice. You denied her claim. Then why was your man found with poisoned steel in his quarters? Jaren spat on the floor. You think I'd follow an Omega's word? No, Ryland said softly. I think you'd underestimate one. He lifted the blade, pressing the tip beneath Jaren's chin. Who else is part of this? Jaren sneered. You'll find out, under the red moon. Arya's blood ran cold. That was now. Before anyone could react, a horn sounded outside, sharp, shrill, wrong. The beta's head jerked up. The outer wall! The explosion came like thunder. Stone trembled. The torches flared out. Screams tore through the corridors as the first wave of attackers struck. Ryland's roar shook the rafters. To arms! Arya stumbled back as the doors burst inward and the night poured in. Arrows, fire, betrayal. The last thing she saw before the chaos swallowed her was Ryland unsheathing his sword, silver eyes meeting hers across the smoke. Stay behind me, he growled. And in that instant, she knew. Her warning had come too late. Chapter 7. Run, little Omega. The world was burning. Arya had never seen fire spread so fast. The crimson flames licked across the palace walls, devouring banners embroidered with the Frostveil crest. Screams tore through the corridors, the clash of steel echoing off stone. She should have hidden. Every instinct screamed for her to crawl under the tables, cover her ears, and pray to wake up when it was over. But something inside her had already snapped, something that would never bend again. When the first blade flashed toward her in the chaos, she ducked and ran, not away from the fighting, toward it. She darted through smoke-filled hallways, her breath short, her heart hammering. The scent of blood hit her nose, sharp and iron-rich, mixing with burning wood. Every nerve screamed, "Run! Little Omega! Run!" But she wasn't running to survive. She was running to find him. Through the haze, she caught a glimpse of the beta's banner falling, the sound of wolves howling in pain and rage filling the courtyard. The Frostveil stronghold was collapsing from within. Traitors mixed with loyalists, indistinguishable in the madness. "Alpha Rylan!" she called, voice raw. But the roar of battle swallowed her words. Smoke stung her eyes. Her vision blurred. Then she stumbled over something soft. One of the guards who had brought her here, his chest still. His blood smeared her palms as she pushed herself up. She forced herself forward up the grand staircase where the air shimmered with heat. Halfway up, A soldier turned, sword glinting red. His eyes weren't silver, they burned gold. A rebel. He lunged. Arya barely ducked in time. The blade grazed her shoulder, slicing through her thin sleeve. Pain flared white-hot. She swung the only thing she had, an iron candelabrum, crashing it into his jaw. He fell back with a grunt. She didn't stop to see if he got up. The Alpha's scent was faint but familiar now. Smoke, storm. Her wolf stirred, pulling her toward it. He's alive. Hold on, she whispered through tears. Please, hold on. By the time she reached the east wing, her bare feet were slick with blood. Some of it hers, most of it not. The hall ahead glowed red from the fires, shadows dancing like demons. She heard him before she saw him, a roar that silenced everything else. Rylan burst through the corridor ahead, sword in one hand, claws ripping from the other. His clothes were torn, streaked with blood. His eyes, those piercing silver eyes, blazed with fury and pain. Behind him, 2 rebels lunged. Arya screamed, "Oh, behind you!" He spun, slicing through both in one clean arc. The sound was sickening, final. Then he turned, and for a heartbeat, disbelief crossed his face. "Arya!" she gasped out. "They're everywhere! The council, Jaren—" "I know." His voice was low, deadly. "Get to safety. I'm not leaving you." He stepped forward, his hand grabbing her wrist hard enough to hurt. "You don't have a choice." But she yanked free, eyes wild. "Neither do you. You'll die if you fight alone." Something in her defiance made him falter. The tiniest flicker of admiration, then regret. Before he could answer, another explosion rocked the hall. The wall to their left split, dust and light flooding through. Rylan shielded her, his arm wrapping around her head as stone rained down. When the smoke cleared, she was trembling but alive, pressed against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath her cheek. He looked down at her, eyes dark. "You should have run." She shook her head, voice trembling. "Maybe I was meant to stay." The look he gave her was unreadable, equal parts rage and awe. "Then stay close." Chapter 8. The Forbidden Gate. The eastern corridor led to the courtyard gate, the heart of Frostveil, and now its deathbed. Bodies littered the snow. The red moon hung heavy above, staining everything in shades of blood. Rylan moved like shadow and flame, cutting down traitors with cold precision, every swing of his blade an echo of fury. Arya stayed behind him, ducking low when arrows hissed through the air. "You can't protect me and fight them," she cried. "Watch me," he growled, blocking an incoming strike with his forearm. She threw herself sideways as a spear slammed into the ground beside her. The sound rattled her bones. Smoke thickened. Shouts rose from the far end. "The Alpha is cornered." Rylan's head snapped up, teeth bared. "No," he snarled. "Not yet." He grabbed Arya's arm, dragging her behind a stone pillar. "There's a tunnel under the armory. It leads to the woods. Take it." "No," she said fiercely. "If you go, I go." "You're an Omega," he hissed. "This isn't your fight." Her chest rose and fell with uneven breaths. "Then why did the goddess let me find that message? Why bring me here at all?" He stared at her, furious, torn, alive in a way she hadn't seen before. Before he could answer, something whistled through the air. An arrow. It struck the torch beside them, flames erupting in sparks. The rebels had found them. Rylan shoved her behind him, drawing his sword once more. "Stay down!" But she didn't. She grabbed the fallen spear, her palms slick with sweat. Her wolf's instincts surged. Every sound sharpened, every breath turned electric. The first attacker charged. Arya thrust the spear awkwardly but true. It struck his shoulder, knocking him off balance long enough for Rylan to finish the job. "Not bad," he muttered, panting. "Don't sound so surprised," she shot back. He almost smiled. Almost. "You're reckless." "You're welcome." The moment hung, too brief, too fragile, before the gate exploded inward. Dozens poured through. "Inside!" Rylan barked, pushing her through the doorway into the great hall. But as he turned to follow, a blade slashed across his side. He grunted, stumbling. Arya screamed his name. She reached for him, but he waved her back. "Go!" "No!" He fought with savage grace, his wolf half awake beneath his skin. The scent of his blood filled the air, hot and metallic, mingling with the smoke. Then she saw it. Behind him, a rebel archer took aim, arrow tipped in black poison, the kind that killed even alphas. Her body moved before her mind. "Rylan!" she cried, and she ran. Chapter 9. The moment before madness time slowed. The arrow left the bow, slicing the air with a high, deadly hiss. Rylan turned too late. Arya threw herself between him and death. The impact stole her breath. Pain exploded through her chest, bright and unbearable. The world went soundless, colorless, just white light and the faint echo of his voice shouting her name. She hit the ground hard. Cold seeped into her bones. Her vision blurred, the red moon swimming overhead. Rylan was there in an instant, hands pressing over the wound, his face pale with disbelief. "No, no, stay with me," he commanded, voice cracking. "Don't you dare close your eyes." She tried to smile, blood on her lips. "I told you. They were coming." "Why?" His voice broke. "Why would you do that?" Her breathing hitched. "Because someone had to." He pressed harder, growling, "You stupid, stubborn—" His words choked on grief. "You were supposed to live." Her hand lifted weakly, fingers brushing his jaw. His skin was warm, trembling under her touch. "You saw me," she whispered. That was enough. Tears spilled down his face, falling onto hers. Don't say that. I swear I'll—" Her eyes fluttered. "The moon's bright tonight." Then silence. Rylan's roar ripped through the courtyard, raw and primal. Wolves across Frostveil froze at the sound. It wasn't a call of command, but of heartbreak. He lifted her body into his arms, holding her close as the world burned around them. The poison arrow glinted beside them, black against the snow. The rebels faltered. For the first time that night, fear touched them. Rylan rose slowly, eyes glowing silver white. "You took my kin," he said, voice shaking. "Now I take everything." He moved like vengeance incarnate. Arya's blood still stained his hands when the battle ended. But by then, the fires had died, the snow had begun to fall again, and the red moon shone brighter, as if watching. He sank to his knees beside her still form, the wind carrying a single whisper. "Moon goddess, if you see her, don't take her yet." The air shimmered. The flames flickered silver. Someone, was listening. Chapter 10. Arrows in the dark. The courtyard exploded before anyone could scream a warning. A whistle cut through the night, a sound too sharp, too fast, and then the world shattered. Arrows rained from the tree line, black as ash and tipped with silver. Torches burst apart, scattering sparks across the snow. Warriors roared in confusion, their formation breaking as fire flared around them. Arya stumbled backward, shielding her face from the heat. She had been standing near the gate, still half in shock from the chaos when the first strike came. The scent of smoke filled her lungs, searing and thick. Then she saw him, Alpha Rylan, emerging from the burning hall like the storm-made flesh. His cloak was gone, his hair loose and wild, silver eyes glowing through the smoke. Fury radiated from him, a force that bent the air. His sword flashed like lightning, cutting down the first traitor who dared charge. "Traitors!" his voice boomed, echoing through the stronghold. "Frostveil stands with me or falls with them." His words cut through the noise like iron through glass. Some wolves hesitated, some obeyed, but chaos ruled more than reason now. Arya's warning had bought him precious seconds that would decide everything. She ducked behind a stone column, her heart pounding. Every part of her screamed to hide. She was just an Omega. This wasn't her war. But she couldn't tear her gaze away from Rylan. He fought like he was born from the moon itself. Every motion was precise, every strike purposeful. She could feel his rage, his grief, rippling through the pack bond that even she, unclaimed, could sense in her bones. "Close the gates!" Rylan roared. "No one leaves alive!" His beta hesitated. "But the council—" "Do it!" The command carried power, forcing obedience. The massive iron gates slammed shut, sealing the pack inside with their own betrayal. Arya pressed her hand to her chest, clutching the burn of her heartbeat. She should have felt fear, but all she felt was awe. And somewhere deep in her wolf spirit, a whisper rose. You were meant to see this. Chapter 11. Fire and Silver. The fire spread faster than any of them could control. Smoke rolled over the courtyards, choking the air. Warriors shouted orders that were lost to the roar of battle. Silver-tipped blades flashed beneath the moonlight, each one a death sentence for whoever it touched. Arya's wrists still bore the faint bruises from the guards who had bound her earlier. She had been thrown aside when the first explosion hit, left behind near a column of shattered stone. Now she knelt in the blood-streaked snow, watching as the pack tore itself apart. Loyal soldiers turned on one another, unable to tell friend from foe in the chaos. The tree line glowed with firelight, casting monstrous shadows across the palace walls. And at the center of it all, Rylan. He moved through the inferno like a god of war, his blade a flash of death. But there were too many. For every enemy he struck down, 2 more emerged. Arya saw him stumble, just for a breath. A spear had grazed his ribs. Blood darkened his tunic. Her chest tightened. No one went to him. They were too busy fighting for their own lives. The beta shouted over the din, "Fall back to the inner ward!" But Rylan shook his head. "If we fall back, we die. Hold your ground." Another arrow whistled by, grazing Arya's shoulder. She gasped, ducking lower. All around her, the courtyard looked like the end of the world. Wolves bleeding, snow burning red, howls of rage and terror piercing the night. She pressed her back against the cold wall, trying to steady her breath. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless, frightened. "Stay down, Omega!" one guard barked, rushing past her. "You'll only get yourself killed!" She wanted to obey. She wanted to disappear into the cracks like always. But every time she looked at Rylan, something inside her refused to stay small. Her warning had saved him once. Maybe she could do it again. A crack of thunder rolled overhead, not from the sky, but from the armory as it exploded into flames. The blast sent shards of metal flying. One struck the guard beside her, dropping him instantly. Arya cried out, crawling to his side. His chest no longer moved. His sword lay in the snow beside him, still warm from his grip. She picked it up. The weight nearly pulled her arm down, but she gritted her teeth and rose to her feet. Smoke stung her eyes. Firelight flickered across her face, painting her in red and gold. She was shaking, terrified, but she moved anyway, because she could see Rylan faltering in the distance. And behind him, someone moved. Chapter 12. The Price of Loyalty. The traitor came from the shadows. He was fast, silent, his blade gleaming with poison so black it drank the moonlight. He crept up behind Rylan, his steps masked by the chaos. Arya saw it all unfold in horrifying slow motion. Rylan was turned, fending off 3 attackers, his sword locked against theirs. The assassin raised his dagger high, eyes fixed on the Alpha's unguarded back. Arya opened her mouth to scream, but her voice wouldn't come. Then something inside her broke free. "Rylan!" she screamed, the word ripping through the storm. He turned, too late. The assassin lunged. Arya ran. She didn't think. She didn't breathe. She didn't care about rank or consequence or pain. Her body moved faster than it ever had, her heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. She threw herself between them, shoving Rylan aside just as the blade sank deep into her chest. A gasp tore from her lips. Her body convulsed. The assassin froze, eyes wide in disbelief. Ryland's roar followed an instant later, so furious it shook the ground. His sword flashed, cleaving the traitor down before the man even hit the snow. Then he was on his knees beside her, his hands covered in her blood. "No," he breathed. "No, no, no." Arya's vision blurred, the world dimming around the edges. She could feel the poison burning inside her, spreading like frostbite through her veins. "Why?" he demanded, voice breaking. "Why would you—" She smiled weakly. "Because you're worth saving." His grip tightened on her hand, desperate. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not," she whispered. "But I saw you fight for them, even when they didn't deserve it. That was enough." Tears streaked down his face, carving lines through the soot. "Stay with me, Arya. Please." Her breathing slowed. The snow beneath her turned crimson. The fires dimmed, the battle fading to distant echoes. She looked past him, toward the red moon shining through the smoke. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Ryland choked on a sob. "Don't go." The moon goddess heard it too. Ryland's breath hitched. "No," he whispered. "Not like this." Chapter 13. Blood in the Snow. The world narrowed to the sound of her heartbeat, faint, uneven, slipping through his fingers like water. Ryland didn't feel the cold anymore. The storm still howled around them, wolves still clashed in the distance, but all he could see was the girl bleeding out in his arms. Her body was so small against him. Too small for the weight she had just carried. "Stay with me," he whispered, pressing his palm to the wound. His voice was rough, cracking under the pressure of every heartbeat she lost. "Arya, do you hear me? You're not leaving me like this." Her breath stuttered. "You smell like smoke." It was barely a whisper, but it hit him like a blow. He laughed once, a broken, helpless sound, and brushed the hair from her face. "You always notice the strangest things." A shiver ran through her. Her lips moved again, forming words that vanished in the snow. He leaned closer. "You were worth saving," she breathed, and for a moment he forgot how to speak. He'd been called alpha, monster, savior, beast, never worth saving. The blood under his hands was hot at first, then cooling too fast. He pressed harder. "Don't say that. You don't get to." Her eyes fluttered open, glazed and soft. "Don't waste your strength on me, Alpha." "I'm not losing you." He gritted his teeth, his voice dropping into a growl. "Do you understand me? I am not losing you." Her fingers brushed his cheek, faint, trembling. "You already lost too much," she murmured. "Don't lose yourself, too." Then her hand fell. For a heartbeat, he thought she'd just fainted. But the silence that followed was wrong. Vast and absolute. No pulse, no breath. The wind stilled. Even the flames bowed low as if mourning. Ryland bent forward, forehead pressed to hers. "Please," he whispered, the word ripping from somewhere raw. "Please." Nothing answered, only the echo of his own breathing. He'd buried soldiers before, friends, family. He'd learned to close his heart and call it leadership. But this was different. This was a life he hadn't noticed until it was gone. The smell of iron and smoke thickened. Wolves circled the clearing, wide-eyed, trembling. They expected orders, vengeance, direction, something. He gave them silence. Then, slowly, Rylan rose. The snow clung to his boots, red and heavy. His cloak tore where the blade had sliced through her. He could feel the warmth of her blood still soaking his chest. He looked at his warriors, men and women who had followed him through war and winter alike, and for the first time they saw him not as Alpha, but as a storm barely contained. "Find them," he said quietly. One of the guards hesitated. "Alpha, who—" "All of them," he snapped. His voice was thunder. "Every wolf who turned against their pack, every traitor who raised a blade tonight. Bring them to me, or don't bother returning. The order rippled through the clearing. Wolves shifted into motion, some out of fear, some out of loyalty, all out of the instinct that came from hearing death in their alpha's voice. When the last of them had vanished into the trees, Rylan looked down again at the girl who'd changed everything. Her face was pale, the curve of her lashes dusted with snow. He brushed them gently. "You were never invisible," he whispered. "I just refused to see." His throat burned. His wolf paced inside him, restless, grieving, howling for something it couldn't name. "You should have let me die," he said softly, bitterly. "It was my fight, my mistake." But even as he said it, he knew she never could have. Arya's soul wasn't built to watch another suffer. She'd have leapt in front of anyone. That was what made her dangerous in a world like theirs, and what made her irreplaceable. He stayed kneeling until the snow buried his knees and the cold numbed his hands. He didn't notice when the storm eased or when the first light began to touch the edges of the forest. He only noticed that she was gone. Chapter 14. The Alpha's Rage. The howl that tore from Rylan's throat was not the cry of a man. It was the sound of an ancient beast remembering what it meant to lose. Every wolf in the valley dropped to its knees. The air itself shook. Snow ripped from the trees and scattered like ash. Then, silence, just long enough for breath to return, for hearts to pound once. And then the Alpha moved. He rose slowly, his eyes no longer silver, but burning white, like moonlight turned to fire. The wind swirled around him, catching his cloak, his scent, his fury. Even his own guards backed away. "Find them," he said again, low and steady, though his voice carried across the field like thunder. "Every one of them." No one hesitated this time. Warriors scattered into the forest, the sound of claws on ice fading into the storm. Rylan turned toward the center of the carnage. The battle was still going, traitors clashing with loyalists, but he saw none of it clearly. All he saw was red. All he heard was her last breath. He stepped into the melee like death come to collect a debt. The first traitor lunged. Rylan caught the blade with his bare hand and snapped it in two. The second raised a bow. Rylan's sword flew, pinning him through the chest before he could draw again. The third tried to run. He didn't make it 3 steps. The Alpha didn't roar. He didn't snarl. He simply killed. Every strike was measured, silent, merciless. Snow sprayed crimson, steel rang, wolves whimpered. The Frostveil clearing became a graveyard, and still he moved, unstoppable, untouchable, the storm obeying his will. When at last there was only one left, a trembling man with blood on his hands, Rylan seized him by the collar and slammed him against a tree. "Who ordered it?" His voice was a growl wrapped in grief. The man's eyes darted wildly. Jaren, he said." "Jaren," Rylan repeated, each syllable colder. "My own council's son." "He promised us freedom," the traitor cried. "He said you'd let us to ruin—" Rylan's claws lengthened, silver light gleaming along them. "And you believed him." "Please, Alpha." The word Alpha was the last sound the man ever made. Rylan let the body fall. He turned toward the heart of the camp, where the snow lay red and smoking. His breath came ragged, his wolf pacing behind his ribs, hungry for more blood, and yet none of it eased the ache inside him. Because vengeance didn't bring warmth back to her hands. Because the quiet after a slaughter was the loneliest sound in the world. He dropped to his knees beside her again. The warriors who had survived gathered at a distance, their heads bowed. None dared speak. "You should have run," he whispered, voice raw. "You were supposed to run." He looked up at the sky, where the red moon hung heavy, indifferent. "This is on me," he said, to the goddess, to no one. "All of it." His wolf growled softly, and for the first time in his life, Rylan couldn't tell if the sound came from his chest or from the heavens themselves. He wrapped Arya's cloak around her shoulders, lifting her gently. The pack parted as he carried her through the snow toward the ridge where the fires still burned. No one dared meet his gaze. No one dared breathe too loud. Every step he took left a trail of blood and silence. And when he reached the altar stone, he laid her down and whispered, "The battle's done, little Omega. You can rest now." But rest was not what the goddess had planned. Chapter 15. The Silent Moon. Dawn crept slowly over Frostveil, washing the battlefield in pale silver light. The wind had quieted, but it carried the scent of death. Rylan sat beside her body, motionless. He had not left since the storm ended. Frost clung to his hair, his lashes, his armor. Beneath his hands she was still warm, but only barely. He remembered the first time he'd seen her, bowed in the courtyard, eyes down, invisible. He'd thought she was just another servant, another shadow in a house full of ghosts. He'd been wrong. He knew that now. "Forgive me," he said softly, his voice hoarse from screaming, "for never seeing you, for letting this happen." Around them, the surviving pack gathered. Some carried torches, others laid weapons down as tribute. The elders whispered the funeral rites under their breath, but Rylan ignored them. He wasn't ready to let go. When the beta approached, cautious, Rylan didn't lift his head. "Alpha," the man began. "The sun will rise soon. We should—" "She will be buried as Luna," Rylan said flatly. The beta froze. "My lord, she was—" Rylan's eyes snapped open, feral. "She was mine. She saved her Alpha when no one else dared move. She will lie as Luna, and if any wolf here doubts it, I will send them to join the traitors." The beta bowed deeply. "As you command." Rylan turned back to her. His thumb traced the curve of her jaw. "Do you hear that?" he murmured. "They'll honor you now. They'll sing your name. But it means nothing if you're not here to hear it." His voice broke on the last word. He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes shut. "You should have let me die." A flake of snow landed on her cheek and didn't melt. Then another, and another, until her skin glittered like frost glass. The beta whispered to the others, "The red moon fades. It's the goddess's hour." They began the low chant of passage, voices rising and falling with the wind. It was a song older than the pack itself, a promise that every soul would be seen by the moon. But the moon was already watching, because the wind stopped. The last note of the chant lingered, hanging in the frozen air. Every wolf felt it, the hush before something impossible. Rylan looked up. The clouds parted, and a single beam of silver light fell upon her body. It was not sunlight. It was too pure, too cold, too alive. "Alpha," the beta whispered, voice trembling. "Do you see—" Rylan rose slowly to his feet. "No." He shook his head, refusing to hope. "No, it's just—" But the light deepened, brightening until it was blinding. The snow beneath her began to steam. Her hair shimmered like liquid moonlight. The pack gasped. Some dropped to their knees. Rylan's pulse thundered. He stepped forward, the light spilling over his hands. "Arya?" The silver glow wrapped her completely. It pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat. He froze. "Arya," he whispered again, and his voice broke. The glow intensified, spiraling upward in a column that painted the sky. Wolves bowed their heads, trembling as a voice, soft, eternal, unmistakable, rolled through the clearing. "The soul that gives without thought will not be taken." The sound wasn't heard so much as felt. Inside every ribcage, every heartbeat. The goddess's presence filled the valley, calm and terrible. Rylan dropped to his knees. "Goddess," he breathed. "If she must return, let it be to peace." The light pulsed one final time, and then silence. A single heartbeat followed, then another. Her chest rose. Rylan's breath caught. He crawled forward, disbelieving. "Arya." Her fingers twitched beneath the cloak. The frost that had settled on her skin cracked and fell away, and under the cold morning sky she exhaled, soft, shallow, alive. The pack fell to their faces in worship. Rylan just stared, tears cutting clean lines down his blood-streaked cheeks. "Welcome back," he whispered, voice trembling. The silver light faded, leaving only her and the sound of her breathing. The wind returned, gentle now, carrying the faint scent of snow and pine, and for the first time in years, Frostveil felt something it had forgotten: hope. Chapter 16. The Silver Light. At first, no one breathed. The clearing lay frozen in the hush after war. Wolves crouched low in the blood-stained snow, eyes lifted toward the impossible. Then a whisper moved through them, not sound, but something deeper, older. It came from the trees, the mountains, the very marrow of Frostveil itself. "The soul that gives without thought will not be taken." The words rippled through every chest like the echo of a heartbeat. And then the moon answered. A beam of silver light broke from the clouds, pure and blinding. It fell upon Arya's still body, piercing the veil between worlds. The snow beneath her began to glow, each flake turning to liquid pearl. The air shifted, warmer, sweeter, as if the heavens themselves exhaled. Rylan shielded his eyes, heart pounding. The light coiled around her like smoke made of stars, circling faster, brighter, until her form was lost inside it. He took one step forward, then another, drawn by instinct stronger than fear. "Arya." His voice cracked. "If this is a dream, let me never wake." The beam thickened, spilling over his boots, crawling up his hands. It didn't burn. It welcomed. Every wound he'd earned in the night began to close, as though her healing touched him too. The pack murmured prayers. The elders fell prostrate, whispering the names of old moons. Even the wind dared not move. When the light reached its peak, the goddess's presence filled the valley, soft, immense, undeniable. The air thrummed like a living heartbeat. Rylan's wolf bowed inside him, tail low, humbled. The snow rose in a spiral, and through it, a faint sound, steady, sure, a heartbeat. Her heartbeat. The alpha dropped to his knees. "Thank you," he whispered to the sky, tears freezing on his lashes. "Thank you." The light flared once more, brighter than the sun, and then it shattered into 1,000 silver motes that rained gently over the pack. Arya gasped. Her back arched, a small cry breaking the silence, and the breath she drew sounded like the first wind of spring after endless winter. The goddess had returned her. Chapter 17. Wraith of the Divine. When the light faded, she lay bathed in moonglow, her hair spread around her like a halo of white fire. The wound over her heart was gone. No blood, no scar, only skin that shimmered faintly as though lit from within. Rylan reached out with trembling fingers. "Arya." Her lashes fluttered. Then she opened her eyes. They weren't brown anymore. They glowed, pure white, soft and endless, reflecting the sky. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Wolves who had mocked her now crawled backward in fear and awe. Rylan's breath caught. "Moon above." She blinked up at him, disoriented. "Did I fall asleep?" He laughed, a broken, astonished sound, and pulled her upright, wrapping his arms around her. "You died?" he whispered against her hair, voice shaking, and then the goddess changed her mind. She stiffened, pulling back slightly, eyes unfocused as if listening to something no one else could hear. The silver light still lingered beneath her skin, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Rylan noticed it too. "You're glowing." "She's speaking," Arya murmured, her voice distant. "She's still here." The pack bowed as the air thickened again, humming with quiet power. Arya's gaze lifted to the sky, her pupils lost in white light. "She says the balance has been broken." That mercy was forgotten, that Frostveil's heart must be remade. Rylan stared, half afraid, half in awe. Through you? Arya looked at him, and for a heartbeat, her smile was both hers and not hers. Through love freely given. The words rang like prophecy. The ground beneath them shivered. From the edges of the clearing, torches bent inward as if kneeling. The goddess's energy spilled across every wolf present. Some wept, some howled softly, their hearts bared open. Arya lifted her hands. Silver trails followed her fingers, weaving symbols in the air, ancient runes of healing. The bodies of the fallen glowed faintly, their blood washing clean from the snow. Not resurrection, but peace. When she finally swayed, exhausted, Rylan caught her before she could fall. "You've done enough," he murmured. Her voice was barely audible. "It isn't me. It's her." He looked up at the moon, now bright and pure again, and whispered, "Then tell her Frostveil remembers." The light around Arya dimmed until only her eyes gleamed softly in the dawn. She leaned against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time, she smiled without pain. But the goddess wasn't finished yet. A hush rolled through the pack once more, the warning before judgment. Chapter 18: Judgment of Frostveil. The sky darkened, though the sun had already risen. A second moon, ghostly and immense, appeared above the first, its reflection mirrored in every frozen lake around the valley. Then the voice came. Not gentle this time, not whispered. "You despise the pure and worshipped power." Every wolf fell flat to the ground, faces pressed into the snow. Even Rylan bowed, his arms still wrapped around Arya. Her glow brightened again, as if the goddess spoke through her. "You hunted the meek and called it order. You punished the kind and called it strength." The words struck like thunder. The air trembled, frost cracked in the trees. Wolves cried out, not in protest, but in shame. Arya's eyes filled with tears. "Mercy, please," she whispered to the sky. "They have learned." But the goddess's tone softened only slightly. Mercy was found because one soul dared to love. One who had nothing gave everything. The silver moon flared. A column of light swept outward from the altar, washing over the pack. Every wolf it touched shuddered, visions flickering behind their eyes, the faces of those they had scorned, the weight of every cruel word, every act of cowardice. They wept openly now, broken and bare before their deity. Rylan bowed lower, his voice shaking. "Goddess of moon and mercy, they are mine to lead. Let their punishment fall upon me." The wind stilled. "You would bear their guilt?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I failed to protect the one who showed us what we'd become." Silence. Then rise, Alpha of Frostveil. Lead not by fear, but by the light she gave you. The radiance faded to a softer glow. Arya's eyes returned to brown, her heartbeat steady and strong. She looked down at him, tears glistening. "She forgives them," she whispered. "Through us." He took her hand, reverently, and turned to the pack. "You heard the goddess. Frostveil begins again, under her mercy, not our pride." Slowly, the wolves lifted their heads. One by one, they bent their knees toward Arya, not him. The Omega, who had been beaten, scorned, silenced, now stood as the living vessel of the moon. She shook her head, overwhelmed. "I'm no queen." Rylan smiled faintly. "You are more. You're the proof that kindness is power." The pack howled together, not in grief this time, but in devotion. Their voices rose into the silver dawn until even the clouds seemed to part wider to listen. Arya closed her eyes. She could still feel the goddess's warmth within her chest, a heartbeat that wasn't entirely her own. She whispered softly, "Thank you." The moonlight pulsed once, an answer, gentle and final. Then the sky cleared, leaving only sunlight and the echo of holiness. Rylan stood behind her, his hands resting lightly on her shoulders. "Frostveil lives," he said quietly. "Because of you." Arya turned her face toward the light, her voice barely more than breath. "Because of her." The snow glittered like stars at their feet, and somewhere far above the moon goddess smiled. Chapter 19: The Luna's Light. The storm had passed. The valley no longer echoed with death, but with breath, the slow, collective exhale of a pack reborn. Morning spilled over Frostveil in muted golds and silvers, filtering through a thin veil of mist. The snow glowed faintly beneath the sun, touched still by the memory of moonlight. At the center of it all stood Arya, alive, whole, changed. The silver glow that had once wrapped her now lingered beneath her skin, a soft radiance that shimmered with every heartbeat. When she walked, the snow did not crunch. It sighed. Her eyes, though brown again, carried a new depth, a quiet knowing that made even the boldest wolves lower their gaze. The pack parted for her instinctively, reverent and silent. They whispered her name like prayer. Rylan followed her from a distance at first, unsure whether to step closer. His hands, scarred and trembling, flexed at his sides. He had faced kings, beasts, and betrayal without flinching. But now, standing before the woman who had died in his arms and returned by divine will, he could barely breathe. She turned slightly, sensing him. Her gaze met his. For the first time, he didn't see the servant girl who bowed her head to everyone's cruelty. He saw the moon's chosen, his equal, his salvation. "You look," he began, then stopped, words failing him. Arya smiled faintly. "Different?" "Untouchable." His voice cracked, rough with awe. "I keep waiting to wake and find you gone again." She stepped closer, her bare feet sinking into the snow without leaving prints. "You won't lose me this time." He looked at her, torn between reverence and regret. "I should have seen you before tonight. I should have—" She placed a finger against his lips. "You see me now." The simplicity of it undid him. His chest ached with everything he couldn't say, everything she already understood. Behind them, the pack waited. The air still shimmered faintly with the remnants of the goddess's power. The line between mortal and divine blurred, and Frostveil felt suspended in something eternal. Arya looked around at the wolves who had once mocked her. None met her eyes directly, but every head bowed. She didn't feel pride, only peace. "Mercy," she whispered, "isn't weakness. It's strength others forgot to feel." Rylan's heart twisted. "You sound like her." "She's still here," Arya said softly, touching her chest. "But so am I." The wind stirred, carrying the faintest whisper through the pines, something that might have been a blessing. And when Rylan reached for her hand, the air between them warmed like dawn breaking through frost. Chapter 20: Bound in Moonfire. The pack gathered beneath the cliff of the old temple, where the last fragments of moonlight still danced along the stones. The ground was clean again, the blood washed away, the scent of death replaced by pine and the faint sweetness of snowmelt. Rylan stood before her, the alpha whose rage had nearly torn the mountain apart, now stripped of his armor and crown of authority. Only a man remained, bare, uncertain, human. Arya lifted her face to him. "You don't have to kneel." He did anyway. The gasp that swept through the pack carried disbelief and reverence. The alpha of Frostveil, kneeling before an omega. It was unthinkable. It was holy. "Don't," she whispered, her eyes wide. "I must," he said quietly. "You carried light into a world that forgot what light meant. You died for me. For them." His gaze held hers, fierce and tender. "How could I stand taller than you?" Her throat tightened. "I didn't save you for this." He smiled faintly. "Then for what?" Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "Because the goddess told me that love, given freely, can change a pack." Rylan reached up, his hand cupping her cheek. It already has. The world seemed to pause around them. The wind softened. The wolves bowed lower, sensing what was coming, the pulse that built between them, magnetic and ancient. The bond. It flared suddenly, a thread of silver light snapping into place between their chests. Rylan inhaled sharply, the scent of her flooding him, wild jasmine and frost, warmth and purity. Arya gasped too, feeling it deep in her soul. Rylan. He stood, eyes bright with moonfire. Do you feel it? She nodded slowly. Yes, like the moon itself is breathing through us. He leaned closer, his voice low, reverent. Then hear me now, before the goddess and the pack that failed you. He brushed her hair aside, exposing the curve of her neck. The mark of death had vanished. Only smooth skin remained, waiting. The air shimmered faintly with divine light. Rylan's fangs lengthened. I mark you not as Alpha to Omega, but as man to woman, as soul to soul. She shivered, her breath catching as his lips brushed her skin, slow, careful, sacred. The bite came gentle, sealing not ownership, but promise. Silver light burst from the mark, spreading down her collarbone, radiant and alive. The crowd gasped. The goddess's voice echoed faintly in the wind. Bound in moonfire, heart to heart. Arya's eyes glowed again, but this time with warmth. The pain was gone. Only connection remained, pure, unbreakable. When Rylan pulled back, his expression was raw with awe. You are my mate, he whispered. Not by fate alone, but by choice. Tears welled in her eyes. And you, mine. He pressed his forehead to hers, breathing her in. Around them, the pack bowed deeper, the old hierarchy collapsing under something greater. Devotion. The moon shone through the breaking clouds, its silver light wrapping them both until it was hard to tell where Alpha ended and Luna began. Chapter 21. The Alpha's Vow. By the next dawn, Frostveil no longer felt like the same place. The air was lighter, the trees seemed taller. Wolves who had hidden in shame the night before now gathered openly in the courtyard, their faces lifted toward the pale morning sky. At the center of them stood Rylan and Arya. He wore no crown, no armor, just the mark glowing faintly at his throat, proof of what had changed. She stood beside him in a gown spun from moonlit cloth gifted by the elders, her hair unbound, her glow softened to something mortal yet radiant. The beta stepped forward. Alpha, the pack awaits your decree. Rylan looked at Arya first. Are you ready? She nodded. Together. He turned back to the crowd. Frostveil has known power without mercy, he began, his voice carrying easily over the wind. We called cruelty leadership and silence strength. We forgot what it meant to protect instead of control. He reached for Arya's hand, lacing his fingers with hers. But this Omega, this woman, reminded us that the greatest strength lies not in dominance, but in devotion. She faced betrayal, cruelty, and death, and still chose to save us. A murmur spread through the wolves. Some bowed in tears. Rylan's tone softened. From this day forward, she is no servant. She is Luna of Frostveil, chosen by the moon herself. The declaration rang through the mountains like a command from the heavens. The pack dropped to their knees, heads lowered. Luna Arya, they whispered. One voice, one name. She looked out at them, not with pride, but peace. Rise, she said softly. Let this be the last time anyone kneels to me. Stand and live with the kindness you once feared. The wolves obeyed. For the first time in centuries, their Alpha and Luna stood as equals before them, light and strength woven together. Rylan turned toward her. There's one vow left, he said quietly. She smiled. Your words already changed the world. Then let me change your life. He lowered his head slightly, not in command, but reverence. By moon and blood, by heart and name, I vow this. Never again will you stand alone. Never again will Frostveil forget what love can do. Arya's eyes filled with tears. Then let this be my vow. Never again will you lead without light. The wind lifted around them, carrying the faint echo of divine laughter. The moon glimmered faintly even under the morning sun, as if watching, approving. The pack howled together, the sound rolling through the mountains like the heartbeat of a new age. It was not a cry of fear or mourning, but of hope reborn. Rylan turned to her, brushing a stray tear from her cheek. You brought the light back, Luna. Arya leaned into his touch, whispering, No, Rylan. You learned to see it. He kissed her then, slow and certain, while the world watched, the moon fading gently into day. And from that day on, every winter night that silvered Frostveil carried a promise in its glow, that even the smallest light once seen could remake the world. Chapter 22, Dawn over the Broken Pack. The night had been long and cruel, but dawn always came, even to Frostveil. A pale light crawled over the horizon, stretching through the mist, brushing across snow soaked with blood. The fires had burned out hours ago, leaving only embers and silence. Rylan stood among the ruins of his courtyard, the place where war had torn the heart from his pack. His sword hung heavy at his side, still stained. His breath came in clouds, not from exhaustion, but from the weight that clung to him like frost. The weight of command, of guilt, of survival. All around him, wolves knelt. The ones who had fought beside him, the ones who had turned against him, and the ones too broken to choose sides. Every face bore some trace of the storm: soot, blood, tears, disbelief. Arya stood beside him, the same Arya who had died in his arms and walked again. The light of the goddess still shimmered faintly on her skin, a soft pulse that seemed to steady the trembling in those who looked at her. When she spoke, even the wind seemed to quiet. Let them rise, Rylan. He looked at her, eyes shadowed. They betrayed you. They betrayed me. And for the first time since the war began, Frostveil saw mourning not as a beginning of more struggle, but as the first promise of peace. Chapter 23. The healer's gift days passed, each softer than the one before. The air still smelled faintly of ash, but beneath it was something purer, the scent of pine sap, melting snow, and hearth smoke. Life returning. The pack had begun to heal, but the scars were deep. Some wolves limped through their duties, others stared hollowly into the distance. Fear still lingered, not of enemies, but of themselves. Arya saw it all. She felt it like a pulse in her chest, a tether of sorrow connecting her to every hurting soul in Frostveil. The goddess's power had not left her. It hummed beneath her skin, restless, waiting. One evening, she found a small pup crying outside the healer's den. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 winters old. His leg was twisted, the wound from a shattered spear left untreated while chaos ruled. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. He sniffled, nodding. "The healer said I won't run again." She knelt beside him. "They're wrong." Her hand hovered over the wound. The air around her shimmered faintly, silver tendrils curling from her fingertips. The pup watched, wide-eyed, as light seeped into his skin. It didn't burn. It soothed. The swelling faded, the bone realigned, and within moments he gasped as his leg straightened. He stood. Then he ran. Arya smiled, tears in her eyes. "The goddess bless you." By dawn, the story had spread through the entire pack. Wolves began gathering outside her chamber. Warriors, elders, pups, all bearing wounds they had once accepted as fate. Arya healed them one by one. Some she touched, others she merely spoke to, her words carrying light where her hands could not reach. But not all wounds were physical. Late one night, 2 warriors stood before her, father and daughter, once divided by the war. The father's hand still bore the scar of his sword. The daughter's eyes still carried resentment. "She joined the traitors," he said bitterly. "I cannot forgive." "She believed you'd forgotten her," Arya replied gently. "And you let her believe it." The man's mouth opened, then closed. His daughter turned away, shame twisting her face. Arya reached out, placing one hand on each of their shoulders. The air shimmered faintly again. "The goddess does not heal what you refuse to face. You must speak." The silence between them stretched until the father broke. "I feared losing you," he whispered, "so I pushed you away." The girl turned back, tears glistening. "You already lost me the moment you stopped seeing me." Arya's light pulsed once more, not bright but warm. The tension dissolved like ice. They fell into each other's arms, weeping. When they finally looked up, Arya's glow had faded. She looked pale, drained, but smiling. Rylan, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward. "You're giving too much." She met his gaze, weary but resolute. "The goddess gave me this gift for them." He cupped her cheek gently. "Then let me be the one who takes care of you." For the first time, she didn't argue. That night, as the pack slept, Rylan sat by the fire with her head resting on his shoulder. He watched the snow outside and realized the world had grown quiet. Not with death, but with peace. The wolves of Frostveil no longer whispered about curses or betrayal. They spoke of healing, of her. He brushed his lips against her hair. "You've done what I never could." Her voice was soft, almost a sigh. "You gave them something I never had, a chance to be better." "And you gave them something they never dreamed of," he murmured. "Hope." She smiled faintly. "Hope isn't mine. It's ours." Rylan looked at her, at the girl who had once scrubbed floors in silence, now the light that guided an entire pack. He thought of all the times he'd walked past her without seeing, and vowed silently never to be blind again. Chapter 24, The Alpha and His Moon. The night came clear and cold, the kind of stillness that felt like the world holding its breath. The moon hung low and full, silver spilling across the valley. Every tree, every rooftop, every snowflake glittered as though kissed by the divine. Rylan led Arya to the ridge above Frostveil where the battle had begun, and where it had ended, the same place where she'd died. "This ridge," he said quietly, "used to remind me of failure." She tilted her head toward him, her cloak brushing the snow. "And now?" "Now it reminds me of faith." He smiled faintly. "And of the woman who taught me what it means." The wind stirred her hair, sending loose strands dancing like threads of silver. "You make it sound like I was sent to save you." He turned to her fully. "Weren't you?" She laughed softly, but her eyes glistened. "Maybe I was sent to save all of us." He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "You did." Below them, Frostveil glowed faintly under the moon. The walls had been repaired, the fires burned bright. For the first time, the pack slept without fear. The howls that rose from the valley were no longer war cries, they were songs of life. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found that message?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Sometimes. But I think I would have found another way to save you." Rylan's chest tightened. "Even if it meant dying again?" Her smile was small, luminous. "Especially then." He stepped closer, his breath mingling with hers. "No one's ever loved me the way you do. And no one ever will," she whispered. The air around them shimmered faintly, the last remnant of the goddess's light. For a heartbeat, it felt as though she watched from above, silent, approving. Rylan wrapped his arms around Arya from behind, pulling her close as they looked down at their reborn home. "You didn't just save my life," he murmured against her ear. "You saved us all." She leaned into him, her hands over his. Then let's live like we were meant to. Together. He turned her gently, his gaze searching hers. The moonlight caught her eyes, and he saw it, the reflection of his own soul looking back. No throne, no ceremony, just two hearts that had already made their vows. He kissed her, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that sealed more than love. It sealed destiny. Around them, the wind rose softly, carrying their warmth into the night. When they broke apart, Arya looked up at the moon. "Do you think she's watching?" "She always is," he said. "But tonight, I think she's resting." They stood together as the first light of dawn broke over the mountains. The moon faded, its work done. The snow began to melt. Frostveil, once fractured by cruelty, now united by compassion, stood renewed. Wolves stirred below, waking to a world rebuilt not by dominance, but by faith and forgiveness. Rylan took Arya's hand one last time before they descended the ridge. "They said Omegas were born to serve," he murmured. She smiled softly. "But under the moon, we learned we were born to save." And as dawn swept over the valley, painting gold over the remnants of silver, Frostveil howled together. One voice, one pack, one promise reborn.